Number 10. Ren Duran. Ren Duran, which sounds kinda like Duran Duran but isn't, is Logan's daughter from an alternate universe. Her mother was a sorceress known as Sylvie Darkness, and she grew up in a family with a strong lineage of magic users. She herself has both a healing factor and magical abilities, which allow her to open portals. Her bone claws seem to also be imbued with mystical energy as they glow. Ren made her first full appearance in 2019's Marvel Comics Presents issue number 5. Number 9. Shadow Stalker. Are you ready for the mongrels? Cause they are coming! Coming for Wolverine's head, that is. The mongrels were a group of Wolverine's children who all kinda had a personal vendetta against him, many of them being abandoned by him. They were convinced by Daken to become a group known as the Mongrels, who were trained by the Red Right Hand to become assassins and to take on Wolverine. Shadow Stalker was one member of the mongrels who didn't even get a name. We also don't know who her mother was, but she had a very interesting look when it came to her costume, sporting a weird mask with flail-like hair tendrils, like a flail ponytail. Pony flails. Cannonfoot. Cannonfoot was another mongrel. Once again, we do not know his name or the name of his mother, but Daken also found him and brought him into the fold. His abilities we know to be closer to Wolverine's, giving him an animal-like instinct, superhuman strength, speed, and agility. He also appears to have claws on his toes and fingers, similar to Sabretooth. Sophist. All we think we know is that Sophist is likely Mexican. He is also a member of the Mongrels. Once again, we do not know his mother's name or his name. We know that he wears a luchador mask and enjoys shouting out battle cries in Spanish though. He often fought with a chainsaw strapped to his arm, hence his mantle of Sophist. Gunhawk. Gunhawk became the leader of the mongrels. He actually got a name, and so did his mother. Yay! His name is William Downing, and his mother was Dolores Downing. She is believed to be a Canadian woman, though the story of her and Logan's relationship still remains pretty unknown. Downing's mother died of old age, so it's likely that she and Logan met a long time ago. And Downing himself is not a young man. He takes the name Gunhawk, inspired by the famous Western gunslinger of the same name. He doesn't appear to have any powers, but he is an expert strategist and skilled combatant. Like the rest of the mongrels, William died fighting his father. Wolverine gave them the option to surrender, but they refused. Later on, Wolverine would discover that the team was composed solely of his children and buried them, feeling great sorrow and remorse for being made to kill them. Wolverine just has such a tragic story. Everything that happens to him is terrible. Number 5. Jerry Drew. Jerry Drew is theorized to be an alternate future version of Gerald Drew from Earth 8. He ends up joining up with the other alternate heroes of Earth 8, becoming a member of the Amazing 8 superhero team, known himself as Spider-Man. The team includes Spider-Girl, Spider-Boy, SP//DR, or Spider, I think is how we say that, Spider-Ham, another Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and a Craven relative also known as Spider-Woman. Lots of Spider-Women. All of these versions of the characters seemingly originating from Earth 8, despite usually being associated with other alternate worlds. Not much is known of Jerry Drew, but he is assumed to be the son of Jessica Drew of Earth 8. He also has some pretty sweet goggles. Number 4. Spider-Boy. Maximilian Morales Stacy is the son of Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales from the alternate reality of Earth 8. Gwen and Miles learned of this alternate reality where they got married and had kids, and were super freaked out by it in the 2015 Spider-Gwen series. Max goes by the superhero mantle Spider-Boy and fights crime along with his sister and parents, which are all obviously part of the Amazing 8 team we just talked about, which operates out of Earth 8. He first became a hero while battling the villain Mojo Harvey, an interdimensional talk show host, alongside his sister. Number 3. Spider-Girl. Charlotte Morales Stacy is the daughter of Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy from the alternate universe of Earth 8. She grows up to become the teen hero known as Spider-Girl. Both Gwen and Miles worked hard as parents to shield their children from the public, as in this reality they are basically celebrities because of their hero status. The Watchers actually determined that Spider-Girl and her brother Spider-Boy were both threats to their timeline due to the fact that they would go on to become interdimensional heroes, often running into alternate versions of their parents. Awkward. Number 2. Gerald Drew. Little baby Gerald is the son of Jessica Drew of Earth 616, the main continuity. Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, Spider-Woman decided she wanted to become a mother solo styles. The story she tells her BFF Carol Danvers is that she had a pregnancy scare with a man she'd been casually seeing at the time named Ryan. After discovering, however, that she wasn't pregnant, she realized how disappointed she was. Now, she had never thought that she wanted kids, but she had never really revisited that priority in a long time. And it seemed that now she very much changed her mind and she did want kids. She really wanted a baby. She contemplated this decision for 3 months, then made an appointment to discuss her options. Jessica became a mom solo after that. There was a dad, but he is presumably just a donor, not someone Jessica ever met, or maybe ever wants to meet. Her son Gerald is often babysat by Jessica's friend and later romantic partner Roger, formerly known as Criminal Porcupine, when she needs to go out on superhero business. Gerald has yet to show any signs of being superpowered, however, he's still kinda wee yet, so there's hope that we could see a little spider baby. Number 1. Mystery Baby. This has been something that has always left me wondering in the comics. MJ and Peter have gotten pregnant a few times in the comics, but none has scarred me the most is when Mary Jane was convinced she gave birth to a stillborn baby in Amazing Spider-Man issue 418. This was all revealed to be part of a plot conducted by Norman Osborn, who sought to steal that baby. Why? Well, we never really found out why. A woman in his employ named Allison seemed to spirit the young baby, who we can assume would be named May, away from her parents and off to Europe. But we've never found out what came of that child. During Identity Crisis, there was a hint that May would return, but it would turn out later to be Peter's Aunt May, and not the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter. The whereabouts of this child, if it's still alive, remains unknown. It has been suggested that the baby was killed by Norman in the comics, but then why the plot and investment to have it taken to Europe only to murder that baby? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'm still hopeful that one day we'll learn that the child survived and maybe see her return to the comics. Or him, that could be a twist, because I think we're all expecting, a May. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. Who are some of your favorite Spider-Man alternates? Which kids of the Spider folks are your favorite? Are you hoping Baby Jerry grows up to become a hero like his mom, or would you prefer it if he stays out of the superhero community? Maybe he could grow up to become a supervillain? I love stories like that.
Number 10. Laura Kinney's Wolverine. The original Wolverine is one of the most popular Marvel Comics characters, having won over the world with his grumpy, fuzzy Canadianness. But here's the thing, because he is so popular and written by so many people, he has a tendency to be kind of inconsistent. At his best, Logan is tough but with a heart of gold, being capable of extreme violence but struggling with the fact that he has the potential to be a feral monster. At his worst, he is written as a psycho who is constantly picking fights with his teammates and continuously talking to no one in particular about how tough he is. His daughter, a half-clone named Laura Kinney, aka X-23, has similar powers, but is less prone to alienating her teammates, being able to get close to people a lot easier than Logan. When Logan died, she took up the Wolverine mantle for a while and managed to be just as skilled and effective, while also showing a lot more emotional maturity than her predecessor. So, while I think Logan is the more interesting character, I think the claim that he's the best there is at what he does is up for debate. Oh, and for what it's worth, when the characters first met and fought, Laura outfought and outsmarted Logan by plugging his wounds with mud so that they couldn't heal over and he would bleed out. Number 9. Connor Kent's Superboy. In 1949, the Superboy series began being published, telling the stories of a young Clark Kent and how he fought crime as Superboy before eventually growing up to be Superman. It detailed his life growing up in Smallville, fighting villains, and teaming up with the time-traveling Legion of Superheroes and Crypto the Superdog. It was a fun, campy series, but other than the character's age, there wasn't really much difference between his Superboy adventures and his Superman ones at the time. A couple continuity shakeups later, we were introduced to a new Superboy, Connor Kent. When Superman was killed by the villain Doomsday, Project Cadmus created a clone of him using a combination of Superman and Lex Luthor's DNA. Connor had slightly different powers and a teenage snark that really set him apart from the Man of Steel. And watching him navigate his complicated lineage, his desire for acceptance from Supes, his time on the Teen Titans, and his growth as a character made him a lot more interesting to read about than a young Clark Kent. I also really like the period where Superman's son John Kent becomes Superboy, but it was unfortunately cut very short when he was aged up. Number 8. Terry McGinnis's Batman. In the Batman Beyond television show, we were shown a futuristic Gotham City where Bruce Wayne had been forced to retire due to his advanced age. A teenager named Terry McGinnis stumbled upon the Batcave and used Bruce's futuristic batsuit to avenge the death of his father, impressing Bruce so much that he was offered the mantle of Batman. Terry's Batman has a lot of advantages over the original Batman, being able to turn invisible and fly with rocket boots and having enhanced strength, just to name a few. Now, this comes with a huge asterisk, as the suit was designed and built by Wayne, and Terry doesn't have the same level of skill as the original Batman, which is why he's ranked relatively low on this list. But the point that I'm trying to make is that Terry's Batman has better tech in every conceivable way than every version of Bruce Wayne at his peak. Also, credit to Terry, he was able to get under the Joker's skin in a way that Bruce never would have thought to in the Return of the Joker film. Number 7. Scott Lang's Ant-Man. People have a tendency to complain about the fact that the Ant-Man movies chose to focus on Scott Lang's time as Ant-Man rather than Hank Pym's, which I don't really get if I'm being honest. Don't get me wrong, Pym is a great character and is responsible for the creation of the tech that allows Ant-Man to shrink and grow and control ants. All that fun stuff. He first suited up as Ant-Man in 1962's Tales to Astonish number 35, but he gave up the persona and became Giant Man barely a year later in Tales to Astonish number 49. He's bounced between identities a lot, having mostly alternated between Giant Man and Yellow Jacket, but to my knowledge he never became Ant-Man again. On the other hand, Scott Lang has been suiting up as Ant-Man since 1979, and in his time in the costume has fought and defeated villains like Kang the Conqueror and Doctor Doom. He has way more quality stories than Pym does just by virtue of having stuck with the identity longer. You could absolutely debate whether or not Hank Pym is a better superhero than Scott, but if you're talking about who the better Ant-Man is, it's hard not to pick Scott. Number 6. Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern. The original Green Lantern was Alan Scott, but the most well known is Hal Jordan. There are other Earth Green Lanterns such as Guy Gardner and John Stewart, who are both great characters who you could make the argument are better or more interesting than Hal, depending on your personal taste. But for this list, I gotta give it to Kyle Rayner. When Hal lost it and became the villain Parallax, he destroyed the entire Green Lantern Corps, and Kyle got the last ring, making him the only Green Lantern left. Kyle proved up to the task and managed to become a capable superhero and member of the Justice League. When he had to go up against Parallax, he managed to defeat Hal and save the planet. Later, when the planet was in danger again, he was the one who convinced Hal to redeem himself. Later, when the Corps was reformed, he was granted the title of Torchbearer for his efforts. He was a host for the Ion entity of Will, and was chosen by every ring on the emotional spectrum to be a member of their various corps, wielding all the rings at once. This led to him becoming the White Lantern, so while he isn't a lot of people's favorite Lantern, he has done more for the Corps than any of them.
Number 5. Benji Parker. Benji is one of Peter's children with Mary Jane from the reality of Earth 19529. He first appeared in Spider-Man Life Story issue number 3 and was created by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley. In this reality, Mary Jane gave birth to twins and left Peter shortly after they were born, not being able to deal with the fact that Peter led 2 lives, one is Peter Parker and one is the hero Spider-Man. Benji was likely mostly estranged from his father for a good amount of his childhood, as Mary Jane took her children with her when she left Peter and raised them near Portland, Oregon. But Benji would reconnect with his dad when he was 11. Number 4. Claire Parker. Claire is the twin sister to Benji. She also first appeared in Spider-Man Life Story issue number 3. Later on in their lives, her family would be tormented by the villain known as Morlun, who killed their Uncle Ben shortly after Claire had returned home after finishing college. Peter hoped to lure Morlun away from his family by returning to New York, but instead Morlun chose this opportunity to strike on Peter's kids. He attempted to devour Claire's life energy, but she managed to fend him off by attacking him while he fed. Benji came up with a theory that Morlun was actually more vulnerable to being attacked while feeding, and came up with a plan to use himself as bait so that Claire could defeat him. This plan actually worked, but it also left Benji permanently injured, causing him to have to walk with a cane for the rest of his life. Number 3. Spiderling. Anime Annie Parker. Parker is from the Earth of 18119. She made her first appearance in 2015's Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows issue number 1. Her Earth was revealed to be one of the alternates condensed and weirdly preserved in God Emperor Doom's battle world following the incursions. Their reality was transformed into the domain known as the Regency. In this alternate reality, Annie was the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter and developed spider-like abilities similar to her father's. Her spider sense also grants her a kind of future vision, and as such is considered more involved and more powerful than Peter's. Number 2. Little Benjamin Benji Parker. This Ben Parker, fondly referred to by his sister as Benji, first appeared in 1998's Spider-Girl in issue 59. You know what that means? He is the little brother of Mayday Parker. Benji showed signs of powers very early on. He bonded with the Carnage symbiote when he was just a little toddler, and May had to use sonic waves to separate the symbiote from him. Because he was so small, his eardrums actually burst, giving him hearing loss and making him deaf, which May felt awful about and super responsible for. Even without his hearing though, Benji was still a perfectly happy little boy. He would later recover his hearing, but after bonding with the symbiote, it was believed that the experience may have altered Benji's physiology somehow. His powers began to surface shortly afterward, leaving him crawling on ceilings and walls and manifesting and using his own super strong organic webbing. It's believed Benji could even grow up become a more powerful hero than both his sister and his father. Number 1. Mayday Parker. May Parker, aka Spider-Girl, aka Spider-Woman, is one of the most famous of Spider-Man's kids. She is from the alternate reality of Earth 982 and first appeared in the 1989 What If series in issue 105. The story she was featured in sought to answer the question, what if Mary Jane had never lost the baby and Spider-Man had a Spider-Girl? People loved Mayday so much that she would later get her own series, Spider-Girl, which would have a 100-issue run. Pretty impressive. Like her little brother, she is of course the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter. She shares her father's abilities, but she isn't quite as physically strong as he is. However, she does have enhanced agility and spider sense, which more than makes up for that slight difference in strength.
Number 10. Ironheart. Better than Iron Man. Okay, hear me out on this one. Riri Williams is a teenage superhero genius who was able to reverse engineer an Iron Man suit by looking at Tony Stark's suit. Tony was impressed with her work and drafted her to fight alongside him in the second Marvel Civil War against Captain Marvel's forces. By the end of the war, Tony was in a coma and Riri was made Ironheart, Iron Man's successor. She used an AI of Tony to help her with the learning curve, but eventually replaced him with an AI of her own design. In her time as a superhero, she has managed to defeat a variety of supervillains and has shown herself to be close to, if not equal to, Tony Stark in raw intelligence. But why is she better? Well, it honestly has less to do with her and more to do with Tony. The original Iron Man has made a series of blunders over the years, such as forming the Illuminati, which led to an angry Hulk taking over New York. He was directly involved in starting not one but 2 civil wars, one of which resulted in the Avengers being disbanded and unable to prevent the Skrull invasion. He was in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. but screwed up so hard that Norman Osborn was put in charge of national security, and he turned himself into a god and killed all of his friends after going crazy. Riri Williams is the better superhero simply because she hasn't had multiple instances of nearly destroying the world in her efforts to make it better. Number 9. Blue Beetle just keeps getting better. The original Blue Beetle was Daniel Garrett, an archaeologist who discovered a powerful artifact called the Blue Scarab. It bonded to Dan and gave him superpowers such as flight, super strength, and energy projection. He became the first Blue Beetle, but one of Dan's students, Ted Kord, took over the mantle when Dan was killed in action while trying to stop Ted's evil uncle from taking over the world. Ted couldn't get the scarab to work for him and decided to instead train himself to his physical peak and use his skills as an inventor to create vehicles and gadgets that would help him fight crime. He operated as a hero in the DC universe for years, being a member of such teams as the Birds of Prey and the Justice League until he was killed in action by the villain Maxwell Lord. The mantle of Blue Beetle survived, with the third Blue Beetle, a teenager named Jamie Reyes, finding the scarab that granted the first Blue Beetle his powers. It fused itself to his spine and gave him the abilities of flight, super strength, mechanokinesis, metamorphosis, as well as access to sound, energy, and fire manipulation weapons. Not only is he the coolest looking of the 3 Beetles, he is by far the most powerful, and he only gets more powerful powerful as Jamie gets more experience as a hero. Number 8. The new Superman does what the original can't. The son of Lois Lane and Clark Kent, Jonathan Samuel Kent has been a superhero since an early age, becoming Superboy when he was 10 years old. After an incident involving a black hole, he was imprisoned by the villain Ultraman for several years before he escaped and returned to Earth. Although it had been years for him, it had only been a few weeks on Earth. The now 17-year-old was tasked by his father with protecting Earth while he went away to deal with an extraterrestrial threat, and John became the new Superman. Although one might assume that as someone who's half human and half Kryptonian, he would be weaker than a full Kryptonian, tests that were run on him before his birth by Batman revealed that his unique physiology would actually be an advantage, giving him the potential to be even more powerful than the original Man of Steel. Another way that he has more power than Kal-El is his ability to become involved in Earth's issues. As the original Superman explained to his son in Superman, Son of Kal-El #2, the reason he had refrained from involving himself more in many of Earth's issues and conflicts was that as an alien born on Krypton, he didn't feel he had the right to impose his beliefs on the people of Earth and should instead lead by example. He went on to say that as someone who was born on Earth, John could involve himself more and end up having more of a positive effect on Earth than even the original Superman. Number 7. Dick Grayson crushed it as Batman. The original Batman is one of the most beloved superheroes of all time, having used his massive brain and fortune to become the world's greatest detective and one of the world's greatest martial artists. When a young boy named Dick Grayson's parents were killed, Bruce adopted him and made him the first Robin. All of Dick's childhood was dedicated to training him to be an even better hero than Batman and to perhaps one day take over the mantle. Dick eventually became the hero Nightwing, but when Bruce was presumed dead, it became clear that a new Batman had to take his place. Several people fought over the cowl, such as Tim Drake and Jason Todd, but in the end, Dick became the new Batman and took on Bruce's troubled son Damian as his Robin. Not only did Dick manage to live up to the mantle and keep Gotham safe, in some ways he was actually a better Batman than Bruce. He had a healthier relationship with the GCPD, where they were more comfortable around him and willing to work with him. He was able to take Damian under his wing in a way that Bruce struggled to match, and he was more open to collaboration with other heroes and members of the Bat family, something Bruce constantly struggles to do, resulting in him causing issues for everyone. When Bruce returned, he was so impressed with Dick's work that he asked him to stay on as Batman to protect Gotham while he worked on establishing Batman Inc. Although he has since gone back to being Nightwing, it's no wonder Batman considers Dick Grayson his greatest accomplishment. Number 6. Captain Marvel. More powerful than the original? Mar-Vell was a member of the alien race known as the Kree, who came to Earth and took on the identity of Dr. Walter Lawson, a scientist working at Cape Canaveral, Florida. There, he met Carol Danvers, who he developed a relationship with. He became the hero Captain Marvel, and she became Miss Marvel. The two acted as superheroes for years until Mar-Vell died of lung cancer in 1982. In the time after his death, a few different characters have taken on the Captain Marvel identity, such as his son, Genis Vell, and Monica Rambeau. But in 2012, Carol Danvers took on the mantle and became the new and current Captain Marvel. An element that she does better than the original Captain is her ability to work with others. While Mar-Vell would occasionally work with other heroes, he was never made an Avenger until he was posthumously granted the honor. Carol, on the other hand, has been a member of several different teams over the years, such as the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Guardians of the Galaxy, and the Alpha Flight space program. She is also a frequent ally of the X-Men. She is a much more involved hero, and as a result has had a much bigger impact on Marvel continuity than the original Captain Marvel.
Number 5. Brian and Mari. Brian and Mari Logan are the children of both Mariko and Wolverine from Earth 1298. This is an alternate reality where Xavier would end up becoming the new Shadow King, and as such the X-Men would be led instead by their co-founder in this reality, Magneto. Here, Havoc is also the only surviving member of the Summers family. We first see Mari and Brian in the Mutant X series, where they are kidnapped by Sabretooth and later have to be saved by their father. Number 4. Wild Thing. Wild Thing is Rena Logan, the daughter of Wolverine and of Elektra from the alternate Earth of 982. The reality of Earth 982 has the Age of Heroes, the big boom of superheroic activity on Earth, happening 15 years earlier in comparison to the main continuity of Earth 616, meaning a lot of our heroes from the main continuity in this reality are retired or simply older now. Such is the case for Rena's parents. Rena is a high schooler when we meet her who is trying to balance the lifestyle of being a hero with that of being a teenager. Her abilities are similar to her father's, but instead of bone claws, she has psychic claws. She is also an insanely skilled martial artist, having been trained by both her father and her mother, so not someone you want to mess with. Number 3. Torrent. Kendall Logan is the amazingly cool daughter of Wolverine and Storm from the alternate Earth of 9811. Reality 9811 gives us an alternate world where the heroes and villains that Beyonder transported to Battle World during Secret Wars never left. Torrent was one of the heroic children who assembled to battle the children of the villains. Torrent has her father's healing factor and her mother's abilities to control the weather. She can also fly, like Storm. Number 2. Kirika Yoshida. From the Age of Apocalypse alternate Earth of 295, we have the daughter that Mariko Yoshida and Wolverine never got to have in the main continuity reality verse 616, Kirika Yoshida. So many alternate Mariko and Wolverine children. I love it. Mariko and Logan, aka Weapon X, took different sides following the rise of Apocalypse. Weapon X joined Apocalypse and the side of mutants, while Mariko allied herself with the Human High Council. As such, Kiriko was somehow lost and, I don't know, she became the prisoner of Mr. Sinister somehow. She was later retrieved from his labs after Apocalypse's defeat, where she had been labeled as X-23. Kirika has claws like her father and seems to have his superhuman senses as well. Number 1. Ray's Darkholme. Ray's is the son of Wolverine and Mystique from the alternate reality of Earth 13729. This alternate timeline saw an alternate Wolverine become headmaster of the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. It is also the home to a new brotherhood of evil mutants led by Charles's and Mystique's son, Charles Xavier II, and his half-brother Ray's. Ray's first appeared impersonating Kitty Pryde in X-Men Battle of the Atom issue number 1 in order to get closer to Wolverine so that he could take him out. We also learned that Ray's killed his mother, whom he then took the place of. He has both the combined powers of Wolverine and Mystique, and is even believed to be a more powerful and skilled shapeshifter than his mother. Wow. Number 10. Felicity Hardy. Alas, we have yet to get a child whose parents are Black Cat, aka Felicia Hardy, and Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker. In the PS4 DLC featuring Black Cat for the Spider-Man game, it was alluded that Felicia had maybe had a secret son without informing Peter, and that he was the father. However, this was later revealed to all be a ruse. We got tricked. So far, that seems to be as close as we've gotten to seeing these two have a child together. What we do have though is a daughter of Felicia's who took up the mantle of Scarlet Spider. That's her daughter, Felicity Hardy, who comes to us from Earth 982. She is the daughter of Felicia and Flash Thompson, Peter's good friend and former high school bully. Felicia later leaves Flash and starts a relationship with her work colleague Diana, causing some strain between her and her daughter. Scarlet Spider was trained by her mother, has a brilliant investigative mind, and uses gadgets in order to simulate spider-like abilities while acting as a hero. She wasn't born with any specific powers. She's also a friend and ally of Mayday Parker. Number 9. Maxine Lee. Maxine Lee is like an adopted daughter to Miles Morales in the comic Miles Morales: The End. Well, really more like an adopted but willful niece. She is the daughter of Genki Lee, who in this reality of Earth 13153 became a hero before he died. Genki in the reality of 1610 is known for being Miles' BFF and also made an appearance in Into the Spider-Verse, albeit a kinda small one. I think we were all hoping for more Genki than what we got. Maxine Lee here is his daughter and is the deputy mayor of Brooklyn, while Miles himself is the mayor of New York. He insists Maxine call him Uncle Miles, but she kinda refuses to do so. Number 8. April Parker. April Parker is the clone of May Parker from Earth 982. When May was just a baby, Norman Osborn had her clone. He turned this clone into the first human symbiote hybrid. This was an experiment that was part of a plan to help Norman find a path to immortality, resurrecting himself as a more powerful Green Goblin. Originally, April was a misguided villain who actually didn't really even have a name. She would take up the name April after she reformed and agreed to join the Parker family, creating a cover of being May's cousin, with her name April being a play on May's name, as in the months of the calendar year, April and May, which are right next to one another sequentially. April would take up multiple different mantles, including Mayhem, one she took up in a future where she turned against May but ultimately sacrificed herself in order to save her cousin in the end. Number 7. Spider-Man. This is an alternate version of Jerry Drew from Earth 982. He grew up to become a Spider-Man in his reality after his mother Jessica Drew recreated the experiment that saved her life and gave her powers. She had to, as Jerry was born with a unique blood disorder, apparently being passed on from Jessica during the gestation period in her womb. Her radioactive physiology caused him to be born with this disorder, and when no one from from the medical community seemed to have the answer, she turned to the procedure that once saved her life. It gave Jerry powers but didn't cure him, unfortunately. In this reality, Jessica Drew ended up retiring from her superhero life after becoming depowered. She got married and had a son, but later would divorce her husband after the trauma of not being able to cure Jerry caused strain in her relationship. Number 6. Tonya Barton. Before she was married to Clint Barton, she was Tonya Parker, and actually, she went back to being Tonya Parker after her and Barton separated. She was Clint's third wife, if you can believe it, and the youngest daughter of Spider-Man in the reality of Earth 807128. We don't know who her mother was or who her sisters were, but we do know she had sisters. She was the mother to Ashley Barton, Peter's granddaughter, who in the Old Man universe would end up taking over Kingpin's area known as Hammer Falls, and would later team up with other multiversal spider totems in the fight against the Inheritors. Ashley's pretty cool. Tonya herself is a master mechanic and perhaps even has a knack for robotics. It's implied anyways. Number 5. Stepford Cuckoos. Also known as the 5-in-1 if you prefer. The Stepford Cuckoos are basically like Emma Frost's daughters. Although they weren't born naturally and were initially planted in the school that she was running at the time, I believe to kind of be used against her, so initially it was kind of like an adversarial thing. Now, however, they are allied with their mum, Emma. The Stepford Cuckoos you see are actually clones of Emma Frost that were created using her own eggs, which were harvested from Emma back when she was in a comatose state and then used for experimentation. The Stepford Cuckoos were some of the results of those experiments. They have powers similar to Emma Frost, their mother, but they also all share a consciousness as well, which at times can make them stronger or weaker depending on their circumstances. Sometimes as well, it's implied that because there's 5 of them, their power is kind of split between the 5, so it's like they're each not quite as strong as Emma would be, but together, collectively, they are as strong as Emma. Also, if you mess with either Celeste, Irma, Esme, Sophie, or Phoebe, you'll likely also have to deal with Emma Frost too, who is very protective of them, which I think is a power of sorts in and of itself. Number 4. Nova. Nova is Sam Alexander. Being that he is cosmic in origin, you know he's one of the most powerful people on this list. He carries on the legacy of Nova and the Nova Corps, which hail originally from Xandar, which is also why when Xandar was sadly destroyed during Infinity War, so many of us were heartbroken, as we feared this meant we'd never see a Nova in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, there is still hope, as a few Nova Corps could have survived. At least, that's what I'm telling myself in my headcanon, so that I can theorize that we will get a Nova at some point. Please give us a Nova, MCU. I would love it. Sam inherited his power from his father, Jesse Alexander, who was formerly known, of course, as Nova. His Nova helmet is what really grants him his powers, as it connects him to the Nova Force, giving him great knowledge, power, and of course durability. Number 3. Green Lantern. There have been a ton of Green Lanterns to carry on the legacy of the Corps, but in the last few years, one of the newest legacy heroes we've been introduced to via the Green Lanterns is Joe Moline, which if you've been around on this channel you know that Joe is one of my favorite Green Lanterns right now. Joe is the Green Lantern who appears in the series Far Sector, where she is also the main character. Like lanterns before her, she comes with her own Green Lantern ring, which allows her to create light constructs. Moline's ring is also unique in the sense that it doesn't actually need a battery to charge, instead being capable of self-charging. However, this is also kind of a weakness, as it means that Joe needs to ration out her ring's juice at times to make sure she is using her power wisely, as it does take time for her ring to self-charge, so she needs to wait quite a while if she runs it down to 0. Number 2. Scar. Scar is the son of the Hulk and his bride and queen Kiera, who once ruled over the planet Sakaar. Scar was actually abandoned by his father as a baby, but this was only because Hulk actually thought that he had died, along with many others on the planet of Sakaar. Seeking vengeance for the destruction of his newfound home, Hulk returned to Earth. Scar would grow up fighting for survival on Sakaar and eventually would wind up on Earth while separated from his homeworld. He isn't the most altruistic of heroes, but this is basically because Scar grew up having it so rough. At first he wanted to kill his father, but eventually through bonding with Bruce Banner, when he could not Hulk up at that time, he was able to bury the hatchet, at least somewhat. Scar not only has immense strength and durability like his father, but he also possesses the old power. Number 1. Starbrand. The current Starbrand might be young, but make no mistake, she is still mighty. Starbrand is Brandy Selby, the daughter of the previous Starbrand. She had her mother's power passed on to her shortly after she was born, as her mother had died. Brandy was taken in by the Avengers, who basically kinda acted as like her group foster parents after coming across her mother and of course Brandy. Recently in the comics, Brandy was shown to be at quite a difficult stage in her upbringing, where she really seemed to be enjoying challenging the authority of those who raised her. At some point, her powers also allowed her to rapidly age herself, so now instead of being a small child, she's depicted as a young woman. Number 10. Ben Parker. Ben and May, by the way, are going to be names you'll get familiar with on this list, so to start off with each point, I'm going to try to clarify just which Ben and which May we're talking about. This Ben is from the Spider-Man Limited series written by J.J. Abrams and his son Henry. It's known as the 2019 Just Spider-Man series, or Spider-Man Volume 3. Here Ben was a young boy when his mother Mary Jane Watson was murdered by the villain known as Cadaverous. His father Peter, distraught, retired as Spider-Man and abandoned his son, leaving him to be raised by what should be a super elderly Aunt May at this point. Aunt May raised Ben as she had Peter and eventually gave him his father's costume, which he then wore to impress his classmate Faye Ito, or Ito Faye, depending on how you want to say it, Japanese way or American way. But when Cadaverous resurfaced, Ben also wore this suit to fight against him, possessing the same powers as his dad. Number 9. May Parker. This May Parker comes to us from Universe X, from the reality of Earth 1122. She first appeared in Universe X issue X. Yep, weird lettered issue. I don't like that. Her past is similar to that of another alternate daughter of Spidey's, but with one possible difference. It's implied that she is actually the daughter of clone Ben Reilly and not Peter himself. Her mother is Mary Jane, however, implying that Ben and MJ maybe had a thing, maybe while she was with Peter? We don't really know. She has similar powers to that of Spider-Man and ends up joining X-51's superhero team composed of different heroes from alternate realities known as the Heralds. You can check out the Heralds team in the Paradise X Herald series. Number 8. Spider-Woman. Ashley Barton is technically Spider-Man's granddaughter, but is still a grandchild of his, so still a child of Spider-Man. See what I did? And she is super cool, so I had to include her. She made her first appearance in 2003's Wolverine series issue 67 and comes to us from the Old Man Logan universe of Earth 807128. She is the daughter of Peter Parker's youngest daughter, Tonya, and Hawkeye. Yeah, try not to focus too much on the potential age difference there. Feels a little wince-inducing. Ashley attempted to take over Hammer Falls and usurp Kingpin's rule there, but she was captured. Old Man Hawkeye later rescued her, only for her to try and kill him, surprisingly. She appears to have powers similar to those of Spider-Man. It's kind of a weird point to finish it on, but whatever, Amanda, that's what you wrote. Number 7. Richie Parker. Richie Parker comes to us from the House of M reality. We've seen 2 different versions of him from different realities, and it's implied that Richard Parker II would grow up to exhibit superpowers similar to his father's, potentially even being able to produce organic webbing in addition to Peter's usual power set. Rather than being the son of Mary Jane and Peter, Richie is the son of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. There is a version of him with powers in What If Spider-Man House of M issue number 1, and a little baby version of him in the series Spider-Man House of M. Number 6. Venom. This May Parker comes to us from the reality of Earth 9997. That would be the universe of Earth X. She first appeared in 1999's Earth X series in issue number 1. She is also the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, like so many of these kids. However, her mother died of cancer when she was younger. Her powers manifested when she was just a teen and are similar to her father's. But May also has the powers granted to her by the alien symbiote known as Venom, whom she is bonded to. Initially, the Venom symbiote sought her out after leaving an elderly Eddie Brock, hoping to continue its vengeful pursuits against May's father and turn her against him. May's willpower and spider sense proved too powerful for the symbiote though, and so its plan did not work. Instead, she bent the being to her will and used the symbiote for her own heroic means. But she still goes by the name Venom, which I like. Number 5. Invincible. Invincible might have a slight edge on Superman, although I think this would be quite a close race between them. Invincible might not appear as impervious as John Kent is, but the fact he has known and overcome great struggles actually might be a mega strength for him, at least in my opinion. And while John may have more powers on paper, Mark seemingly has less overt weaknesses. Sure, he has sound and the Klaxus plant, which is possibly a part of the virus that wiped out out the Viltrumites, but I would still argue that these aren't as well known or as deadly as kryptonite is to Kryptonians. Well, other than of course that virus maybe, which obviously is quite deadly. That will kill you. But even then, Mark managed to survive that virus too, so hey, he can still be hurt and killed. He isn't invulnerable in the same way John is. Still, Invincible is not only carrying on the legacy of his dad, Omni-Man, who is sometimes a villain, but at the end of the day comes back to the side of overall heroism. But he is also just a super cool hero who manages to survive a lot of crazy stuff. For that reason, I gotta consider him stronger, because I feel like even when the odds are super against Mark, he still manages to somehow come out on top. I feel like John doesn't experience that as much. I could be wrong. I'm not as familiar with John Kent, but hey. Number 4. Power Girl. Although some may think of Power Girl as being more Superman adjacent, like her alternate self Supergirl, in her reality of Earth 2, Kara's story differed from her main continuity counterpart, causing her to actually fill the role of Superman as opposed to working alongside him. This is because the Superman of Earth 2 ends up dead during Infinite Crisis. So while prior to that Power Girl may have worked alongside her cousin Kal-El, she inevitably ends up taking over for him instead as a result of his death, in essence carrying on his legacy as her world's premier Kryptonian superhero, Power Girl. Oddly enough, this might also be what helps to make Huntress of Earth 2 and Power Girl such close friends. They're both legacy heroes who have suffered loss and aim to carry on and uphold the legacy of their deceased relatives. Number 3. Dr. Doom. Doom is one of the most powerful characters around when it comes to the Marvel Universe, but he is oftentimes considered a villain. So, how does he make our cut? Well, that has to do with the fact that Doom actually at one point was considered a legacy hero for Iron Man, if you can believe that. This all went down after Tony became comatose following a fight with Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel in Civil War II. In theory, Tony really won the Civil War, but was also taken out by Danvers in the end, as he lay in a comatose state with the chance that he may never recover. Spoiler alert, he did recover though. A few heroes rose up to take his place. One was his young protege, Riri Williams, who took up the codename of Ironheart and was guided by an AI replica of Tony Stark. The other was Dr. Doom, who became known as infamous Iron Man, at least editorially. He actually proved to be a pretty unstoppable force as a hero, and was someone a lot of powerful villains did not want to mess with, as they knew his reputation from working alongside him during his time as a villain. They were like, I know what Dr. Doom is like, and I do not want to mess with him. Is there any way we can come together and get rid of this guy, because he's gonna be a problem. Number 2. Hope Summers. Hope Summers isn't known by the codename of Cable, but she is his adopted daughter, and for that reason is considered someone who could fill his shoes. She was one I considered giving the top spot on this list even. That is how powerful she is. Hope Summers was born and known as a baby to be the mutant Messiah, the firstborn mutant following the events of House of M and M-Day. Because of this, she was widely sought after, with some, like Bishop, believing she was destined to bring about their doom, and others, like Cable, believing that she was destined to be their savior. The fact that Cable and Bishop come from different timelines likely influencing those thoughts, feelings, and experiences with the future Hope Summers. Hope is a mutant whose powers allow her to adopt those of the powers around her. Unlike Rogue, she does not need direct physical contact to take on someone's powers, and she doesn't drain their power or life force energy. When Hope adopts someone's powers, she's actually able to use them at their highest level without needing to first train with the powers and learn how to master them. She basically just becomes a default auto expert. Number 1. The Flash. The Flash is one of the most powerful heroes in comics, and Wally West isn't just a legacy hero carrying the mantle of the Flash following in his uncle Barry Allen's footsteps, but he also happens to be even faster than Barry, which makes him pretty insane when it comes to power levels. Wally West is probably also my favorite Flash, and I love super speed, and I think it's insanely powerful and resourceful when it comes to what you can accomplish with it. So of course, I have to pay respect and give Wally West my top spot on this list. While Barry Allen has made a lot of messes that he had to use his powers to get him out of, Wally typically doesn't make a ton of messes, or at least, he doesn't make as many. He just gets things done. Well, of course, minus the tragedy at Sanctuary during Heroes in Crisis anyways, but that was a sad time for Wally West. That was a rough time. We can't blame Wally, okay? He was going through some stuff. Number 10. Sisters. The Sisters were a group of clones that Gabrielle Kinney was a part of. Altogether, including Gabby, there were 10 of them. They were created by Alchemix using samples of DNA from both Logan and Sarah Kinney, Laura aka X-23's mother. They were each known as a new numbered clone for X-23. Zelda was the oldest and the leader, with the sisters the elders usually protected the younger clones, with Gabby being one of the youngest and often receiving the most protection from the other sisters. Alchemex intended to create them to be used as bodyguards, but they eventually escaped and sought to get revenge on their captors, running into Laura Kinney, who was Wolverine at the time, and who initially questioned their motives. Number 9. Fire Knives. On part 1 of this list we talked about some of the mongrels, but there was someone that we did not mention. Fire Knives is a daughter of Wolverine. We don't know much about her, not knowing her true name or the name of her mother or who exactly her mother was. What we do know is that Daken recruited her to join a team known as the Mongrels, whose name was likely inspired by the name Daken had taken, which means mongrel in Japanese, a cruel name that his adopted parents' servants referred to him by, due to his mixed appearance. The Mongrels were a group used against Wolverine by the organization known as the Red Right Hand, all of whose members had a vendetta against him. We don't know if Fire Knives had any superhuman abilities or was a mutant like her father, but we do know that she was a skilled martial artist and a combatant. It's also possible, considering her own fiery red locks, that her mother was a redhead, which Logan tends to have a weakness and fondness for, like many other characters in comics too. Seems to be a pattern in the comics world. Redheads, we like redheads. Number 8. Hulk Jr. This is the child that Old Man Logan adopted after defeating the Banner Clan, who in turn had killed Logan's family after they got tired of waiting for him to return with the rent money. When Logan of Earth 807128 had discovered they had killed his family, he went into a rage, killing everyone except for little Hulk Jr., the original Hulk, Bruce Banner's favorite and newest member of the gang. Baby Bruce was then adopted by Old Man Logan, joining him on his adventures, with Logan vowing to raise him as his own son and teach him how to be a hero. Number 7. Scotty and Jade. Scotty and Jade were Old Man Logan's naturally born children, which he had and raised with his partner Maureen. It's thought that Scotty was named after Scott Summers, Wolverine's old and long dead friend. Both his son and daughter, as well as Maureen, were of course murdered in Logan's absence when he went on that mission to acquire enough money to pay rent to the Hulk gang. This was the consequence that Logan was threatened with by the Banner Clan if he didn't pay rent in time. The sad thing was he did collect and bring back the money in time, only to find that the Hulks had gotten bored and restless, tired of waiting, so they killed his family anyways, before the due date that Logan and the Banner Clan had actually agreed upon. Pretty tragic. Number 6. Kuan. Kuan is Wolverine's young clone who is from the alternate Earth of 13119. He first appeared in the Savage Wolverine series, where we were both introduced to him and also watched him die. What's rare in comparison to the reality of Earth 616 is that Kuan was a male clone, whereas many of the Wolverine clones we've seen have been female. He was sent after Logan to help retrieve, or potentially kill and retrieve, his body for a mysterious organization that is never revealed. Instead, the two of them end up teaming up.
Number 5. There was an original Black Canary? Black Canary is a well-loved superhero in the DC universe, but not everyone realizes that Dinah Lance was not the original hero to go by this name. Her mother, Dinah Drake, was the original Black Canary, first appearing in Flash Comics number 86 all the way back in 1947. Originally her MO was similar to the Green Hornets, with her posing as a criminal in order to get close to and then take out criminals, but she soon abandoned this plan and became a more straightforward crime fighter. She had no powers, but was a skilled fighter and acrobat who was known for training canaries to do amazing feats. She joined the Justice Society and married a detective named Larry Lance. She eventually gave up the mantle and was replaced by her daughter, Dinah Laurel Lance, in 1969's Justice League of America number 75. The second Black Canary is far more effective than her mother, being one of the greatest martial artists on the planet, according to official canon being evenly matched with Batman. She has a keen tactical mind, and although she doesn't train birds, she possesses the metahuman gene, which gives her her signature ability, the Canary Cry, a devastating sonic attack capable of damaging objects and hurting her enemies. Number 4. Johnny Storm's Human Torch is fantastic. The original Human Torch was a humanoid android designed by a scientist to be a perfect imitation of humanity. Due to a bizarre design flaw, whenever the android was exposed to air, he would burst into an extremely hot flame. The android achieved sentience and went on a run through the city, burning everything he touched and being unable to control his fire. He eventually learned how to control himself and became one of the most popular Marvel crime fighters of the Golden Age. He was retired as a character not long after the end of the Golden Age, and his name and power set were reused for Johnny Storm when the Fantastic Four stories began being published at the beginning of the Silver Age. He was eventually brought back, but it is fair to say that he is the more obscure version of the character, with Johnny not only being much more powerful, but much more interesting than the Jim Hammond android. Number 3. Wally West, a Generations Flash. Similar to how Dick Grayson got the Batman gig, Wally West started out as Barry Allen's sidekick, Kid Flash. When Barry Allen seemingly died in the Crisis on Infinite Earths, his old sidekick took up the mantle. Unlike other legacy characters who took on the original hero's legacy for like a year, Wally was the main Flash in DC continuity from 1986 all the way until 2009. In this time, he became a fan-favorite version of the character, being more quippy and impulsive than his mentor. Wally was so popular that when the Justice League animated series came out in 2003, Wally was the featured speedster, not Barry. In fact, when Barry was eventually brought back in 2009, many fans were quick to point out that Barry had been rewritten to have many of the personality traits that had made Wally so beloved. Number 2. Hal Jordan, Earth's greatest Green Lantern. The original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, got his powers when a mystical entity called the Starheart came to Earth and took on the shape of a lantern. It saved Alan from a train wreck and gave him the mental instructions to build himself a power ring which would create energy constructs. He became the first Green Lantern and joined the Justice Society. As the Golden Age of comics ended, his series was cancelled and he became somewhat obscure. 8 years after his cancellation, the title and concept of Green Lantern was reinvented and we were introduced to Hal Jordan in 1959. He was a test pilot who was chosen to join the Green Lantern Corps, a group of space cops tasked with defending the galaxy. Hal got a better look than Alan, he was given more power, and most importantly, was part of a group that lent itself to a rich and complex mythology that is much more beloved by fans than the original Golden Age version of the character. Number 1. Barry Allen was so cool he started the Silver Age. The original Flash, appearing in 1940, was Jay Garrick, a college student who accidentally inhaled heavy water vapors while taking a smoke break in his lab. This gave him his super speed, which allowed him to become the hero, the Flash. Jay's Flash was known for wearing a simple red shirt with a lightning bolt and a kettle helmet with golden wings on the sides. When Flash was reinvented in the late 50s, his new identity was Barry Allen, a crime lab scientist who was hit by lightning and doused with chemicals and became able to tap into the Speed Force. Barry was given a much more iconic costume and series of rogues to fight, and his introduction is often referred to as the start of the Silver Age of comics. In an odd move, it was revealed that in Barry's universe, the adventures of Jay Garrick were comic books that Barry read as a child, inspiring him to call himself Flash. In the iconic Flash of Two Worlds story, it was revealed that Jay actually lived in a different world in the multiverse. The comics were a result of the writer being psychically influenced by the multiverse. This was later retconned and Jay became the Flash of the World War II era rather than a semi-fictional figure. But most of what we love about the Flash was introduced not by Jay's time as the Scarlet Speedster, but Barry's.
Number 10. Ironheart. Ironheart is Riri Williams. In part 1, we talked about how Dr. Doom weirdly carried on the legacy of Tony Stark's Iron Man, but at the same time, so was Riri. She might not be Doom, but Riri is insanely smart, especially for just being a teenager, and there have been glimpses into futures where we see her permanently carry on Iron Man's legacy. Ironheart also comes with her own set of armor, like others who have taken up the legacy of Iron Man. And like Tony, she can build and repair her own set of armor as well. As Ironheart, Riri Williams was also guided by Tony Stark himself. At first she was guided by his real-life physical self, and after he was knocked into a coma by Captain Marvel near the end of Civil War II, an AI version of him became her guide. Number 9. Miss Marvel. For this point, we are focusing on Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel, who carries on the legacy of Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel. Well, in her Disney Plus streaming series, it is implied that Kamala is part of a different group of heroes. In the comics, she's actually known for her ties to the Inhumans, possessing Inhuman ancestry, which is also how she gets her powers. They first manifested when the Terrigen Mists were released onto Earth, causing her potential to be unlocked and granting her stretching and sort of shape-shifting abilities, which Kamala often uses in combat to defeat her enemies. Kamala's connection to Carol is simply that she is a huge Captain Marvel fangirl, and as a result, when Carol took up the mantle of Captain Marvel, Kamala was permitted to use her former superhero name of Miss Marvel. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this this list and you are loving our channel, please head on over to Facebook where you can also follow us. And we also have some fresh content up there right now. We did a Q&A in our community posts here on Top 10 Nerd on YouTube, and we actually did our responses over on Facebook, so go check that out. It's a really fun video actually, it's really funny. Number 8. Donna Troy, aka Wonder Girl. Donna Troy's backstory and her connection to Wonder Woman changes depending on the continuity and the narrative. Although I guess right now all of them would be true given that all the continuities were kind of like reconciled into one during Dark Knight's death metal. Donna has been both an enemy turned friend to Wonder Woman and simply just a friend. She has been like a little sister to her as well at times. She was either or both made from clay or using a mirror, where she was created as a duplicate to Wonder Woman. She is often depicted as sharing many of Diana's traits, powers, and abilities, putting her on a similar power level to Wonder Woman. Number 7. Iron Fist. Lin Li is the new Iron Fist, having inherited the powers from Shou-Lu when he was washed ashore and lay dying. Initially, this new Iron Fist would appear to readers to be, although many fans did suspect that Lin Li may indeed be the new Iron Fist. Previously, Lin was known by the name of Swordmaster. He carries on the legacy of many heroes who have come before him, including that of Danny Rand, who for years was known as the Iron Fist at Marvel Comics. Lin even at one point teams up with Danny. Not only does Lin possess the powers of the Iron Fist, but he also comes with other mystical powers, being the last descendant of Zhan Fu-Li and therefore being granted the power to wield the sword of Fu-Zi. Lin is also exceptionally skilled in the martial arts and sword fighting as well as puzzle solving. Number 6. Kid Flash. Wallace West was basically set up to be the new Wally West in the New 52 continuity, but people weren't keen on losing Wally entirely to gain Wallace, so instead Wally was returned to continuity and Wallace R. West was made the younger cousin of Wally West instead of like being his replacement in the continuity. Like his older cousin, Wallace is also a speedster and shares a connection to the Speed Force. He is known by the superhero or sidekick name of Kid Flash, carrying on the Flash legacy. He has one of my favorite superpowers of all time, super speed. He can not only use these abilities to travel really fast through space, but also to travel through dimensions and through time. Wallace can also do things like heal using the Speed Force. Number 5. Emiko. Emiko is the adopted daughter of Wolverine. She first appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue 181 where her mother was killed when a dragon from Battleworld rampaged through Tokyo. True story. Wolverine agreed to look after Emiko as her mother lay dying, worried for her daughter's safety. Wolverine promised to raise her as his own, and well, that's kinda what he did. Well, it was mostly his fiancée Mariko who raised her, as Wolverine of course was often busy with X-Men missions. After Mariko was assassinated by the Hand, Emiko ended up in the foster system. When Logan learned Emiko's foster parents were not taking proper care of her, he removed her from their care and asked his friend Yukio to look after her. Seeing as how Emiko has spent most of her life raised with Clan Yoshida, although she does not have any powers just yet, she is trained in the martial arts. She's even teamed up with Wolverine and Yukio at the end of issue 303 of Wolverine. Pretty cute. Number 4. Scout. Scout was formerly known as Honey Badger and is a clone of Wolverine. She was also created using Wolverine's genetic material and that of geneticist Sarah Kinney. She is one of 10 clones created in this vein who are often referred to as the Sisters. Gabrielle Kinney, or Gabby, was created by Alchemex Genetics and was trained and used as a bodyguard to be sent out on missions. Her and her sisters were made to feel no pain, which sometimes gives her a strange edge in comparison to some of Wolverine's other children if we're talking about power levels. Although, you know, pain is there to be felt for a reason, so. Number 3. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. He was adopted by James Hudson, who promised to take care of Wolverine's newborn son after the two fought together in Iraq and Wolverine died. Jimmy's last name was changed and he was raised without ever knowing about his father, or that he was likely a mutant. When he was a teenager, his power manifested, and it was only then that he learned of his true origins. Number 2. Daken. Daken's original name was Akihiro. He is a mutant natural-born son of Wolverine and his wife Itsu. Itsu herself was very pregnant with Logan's child when she was murdered by Bucky Barnes during his time as the assassin known as Winter Soldier. It was later revealed that Itsu's unborn child did not perish, but was instead cut out of Itsu's womb and retrieved by the villain Romulus. Romulus later left the baby on the doorstep of a wealthy Japanese family, who took the baby in and raised him as their own. The family named him Akihiro, but the servants referred to him as Dakin, meaning mongrel, because of his mixed racial appearance. Romulus would later reveal himself to the boy after everything kinda went sideways, claiming to be him from the future and attempting to use and manipulate Dakin for his own purposes. Dakin and his father, considering his backstory as such, have had a rocky relationship throughout the comics, and Dakin is often painted as a villain or a reluctant anti-hero. Number 1. X-23, also known really as just Wolverine. She and her dad are both Wolverine really. Laura Kinney is technically the genetic twin of Wolverine. She was created when Facility tried to create a clone of Weapon X to use, well, as a weapon. Sarah Kinney, an acclaimed geneticist, was brought in when Xander Rice failed to replicate the adamantium bonding procedure on any of his subjects, who all died during the process. The genetic sample that Sarah was attempting to use to clone Wolverine with was damaged, which prompted her to suggest making a female clone instead of reconstructing the genetic sample artificially, which would take years. When Dr. Sutter and Xander Rice refused to agree with Kinney that this was the best way to proceed, she rebelled and decided to go against their wishes, moving forward with her version of the project. In the end, she was forced into being the surrogate mother for baby Laura and regretted her earlier views of seeing this being as only a weapon instead of the true miracle of life that it was. Laura would grow up to be X-23 and would eventually escape the facility and track down her genetic father, Wolverine. Number 10. Powerhouse. Powerhouse is the son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm Richards. He is known more commonly by his civilian name, Franklin Richards. Both he and his sister Valeria are gifted youngsters, each in their own way, but apparently not mutants. Franklin initially had powers that allowed him to warp reality and eventually was revealed to be a mutant. However, this sadly has not stayed the status quo. Lately, Franklin has struggled with his powers, with them going on the fritz and then even disappearing completely. Along with that, it was revealed that it was thanks to Franklin subconsciously warping reality to appear as a mutant that he was considered as one, and thus without his powers was revealed to be not truly a mutant at all. That is why I'm ranking Franklin so low on this list this time around. However, I am confident that in the future, Franklin will both recover his powers and likely be reinstated with his mutant status. So hopefully this change to his character is only temporary and not permanent. However, only time will tell. Number 9. Nightwing. Nightwing is a legacy hero for Batman. Although he doesn't share the same codename currently, Dick Grayson has taken up the cape and cowl of his adoptive father Bruce Wayne's Batman before. When Batman was believed dead, it was Grayson who attempted to fill his father's shoes and for a time did become Batman. While some prefer the idea of Bruce's natural / really test tube son, Damian Wayne, taking up the mantle, others believe Dick, who is Batman's first Robin and is later even adopted by Bruce, is more suited to carry on the Batman legacy. While still only being a super skilled man, Nightwing is one of the most well-rounded Robins to have existed in the comics, which might also be why folks are so interested in seeing Nightwing take up the Batman mantle more permanently, following Bruce's future retirement or actual death. However, you know how it goes. People usually die and then they come back. That's just how it goes. Except now in DC, apparently we're gonna get a reality where there are legacy heroes and they just keep time passes, people die, things change. It's gonna be crazy. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure that you show us that you're loving it by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Miss Martian. Miss Martian carries on the legacy of her uncle John Johns. She is technically a white Martian who disguises herself as a green Martian because white Martians, well, they got a pretty bad rap. Although Martians usually don't come up as much when we talk about heroes who are most powerful, likely because of their weakness to fire, which is really only psychological, they actually have a ton of impressive powers, both in the physical and psionic spheres. Magon herself can shapeshift, cast illusions, control, read, and manipulate minds, and has super strength and durability as well as flight. She can also appear invisible too, because, you know, shapeshifting and such. Number 7. Captain Marvel. Although Carol Danvers is not related to Captain Marvel, she still is technically a legacy hero. She carries on his legacy both as the hero Miss Marvel and later as Captain Marvel, taking up his mantle after his death to honor his legacy. Carol is a cosmic powerhouse who gets her name and powers from the Kree hero Mar-Vell. Her powers first manifested initially when he saved her from the exploding Psyche Magnetron, and it was because Carol wished to be like Mar-Vell that she was initially believed to have manifested her powers, which is also because of the Psyche Magnetron and explosion. If you read the comic, it makes sense. Later on, we'd also learn that she actually shared Mar-Vell's Kree heritage, with her mother being a Kree who lived on Earth disguised as a human. Number 6. Superman. John Kent is the son of Superman and Lois Lane. He carries on the Superman legacy and even takes up the mantle for himself, becoming known simply as Superman. Initially, he and Damian Wayne grew up together at the beginning of the New 52. They weren't fast friends, but would eventually become really good friends. Best friends, if you will. Actually, Superman's John Kent appears to be good friends with many of the Bat Family kids, including the adopted son of Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing. Being half Kryptonian, John is immensely powerful due to the yellow sun of Earth. He can fly, has super strength, speed, and invulnerability, among other powers.
Number 5. Starman. The original Starman was Ted Knight, a wealthy scientist who created a device called the gravity rod, which allowed him to fly and shoot energy blasts and stuff like that. Personally, if my ability to fly depended on being able to hold a flashlight in my hand, I'd put a strap on it, kinda like a Wii controller, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, he was a hero in the Golden Age, first appearing in 1941 and being a member of the Justice Society. He had 2 sons, David and Jack, but he could be somewhat neglectful of them because of his focus on superheroics. When he retired, he passed the mantle down to his older son David, which was fine with Jack because he thought the whole thing was dumb. David was Starman for about a week before the son of the original Starman's archenemy, the Mist, shot him with a sniper rifle. At this point, Jack reluctantly took on the mantle. He redesigned the suit to be more casual and modern, and his father gave him a gravity staff to replace the rod. The story of someone reluctantly becoming a hero while trying to reconcile with an absent father is more interesting to me than anything Ted Knight got up to in the Golden Age. So I'm calling Jack the superior Starman, and if nothing else he did better than David. Number 4. Night Owl 2. Despite being introduced in the same comics at the same time, a couple of the characters in Alan Moore's Watchmen universe are legacy characters, such as the heroes going by Night Owl. The original Night Owl was a man named Hollis Mason who was a policeman in New York in the late 30s. He decided to become a vigilante and eventually joined the masked adventurer group the Minutemen. He was a good hand-to-hand fighter, but beyond that wasn't the most impressive hero. After he retired, a man named Dan Dryberg, who had inherited a large amount of money, wrote to him and asked for permission to take up the mantle. Dan was a genius inventor, having a variety of gadgets like night vision goggles, a more advanced suit, and his owl ship, Archie. He trained with Hollis to be just as good of a martial artist, and the two became good friends until Hollis's death. Considering how much more advanced Night Owl 2 is in every sense of the word, it's hard not to consider him the superior crime fighter. Number 3. Amadeus Cho's Hulk. Amadeus Cho is a brilliant scientist not dissimilar to Bruce Banner, who is considered the 6th smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe. He worked alongside several heroes in the decade before he became Hulk, but Banner was the first he helped. That made it very fitting when he was forced to use special nanites to absorb the Hulk's powers. This turned him into a new Hulk. But unlike Banner, who suffers from severe DID, and as a result has several different and very dangerous angry Hulks inside of him, Cho was able to keep his Hulk side relatively under control, priding himself at being a better and smarter Hulk than Banner. Now, if I was an Avenger, I would feel a lot better with Cho on my team than the unpredictable Banner. So I really do think that Cho's Hulk is the better hero, due to him rarely losing control. But setting aside the logic of who would realistically be the better hero, who wants to read a Hulk comic where he doesn't lose control? Banner is by far the more interesting of the two characters, even if Cho is a better fit for teams like the Avengers. Number 2. Tim Drake's Robin. Several people have taken on the mantle of Robin the Boy Wonder over the years, with the original being Dick Grayson. Dick operated as Robin for decades in the comics before he was finally allowed to grow up. In story, he and Batman grew apart and were having a lot of personality conflicts, so Robin quit and eventually became Nightwing. He was replaced by Jason Todd, who was a street kid Batman caught stealing the tires off the Batmobile. Jason became Robin but was never as skilled as Dick, and had a tendency to be overly aggressive and to clash with the Dark Knight, frequently disobeying orders and eventually being killed by the Joker. After this, a kid named Tim Drake realized that Batman in his grief was becoming more and more violent and reckless, and decided that Batman needed a Robin to help temper his aggression. Tim became Robin and took to the role flawlessly. Now that Tim has been replaced by Damian Wayne and has become his own hero, you could make the argument that he is not as skilled a solo hero as Dick's Nightwing or Jason's Red Hood, But as far as which of the Robins has worked the best with Batman, Tim stands above the rest, with even the original Dick Grayson having admitted that Tim was the best of the Robins. Plus, his Robin costume was a massive improvement on the classic no pants and pixie boots look both Dick and Jason had worn during their times as Robin. Number 1. Zatanna. As she is such a staple of the DC universe, albeit an extremely underrated staple, a lot of fans might not even realize that Zatanna the Magician is a legacy character. Her father, Giovanni Zatara, made his first appearance in Action Comics number 1, the same issue that featured the first appearance of Superman. Like his daughter, he performs as a stage magician, but is an actual magic wielder who is able to cast spells by speaking his incantations backwards. He uses these abilities to fight crime and do the whole superhero thing. Zatanna took a similar path as her father, but was more popular with readers. Due to her father having been dead in the comics for several years and therefore rarely showing up, and her being much easier on the eyes, not many people seek out her father's adventures, instead choosing to focus on his progeny, one of the most popular legacy characters in comics.